Who knows who Tony Woyak? All right. Oh, good. His people, then. And we always remember him because he wrote his own eulogy, as many of you know, and the very last line of it was, "And support your local historical societies." That was his very last word to us all, and I think that cultivating the love of history, as these lectures help do, is a great legacy, you know, in part of his. All right, I'm putting my glasses on because I, as a member of the Washburn Historical Society, often fail to read this correctly. So I'm going to do it absolutely correctly tonight. The Winter Series is made possible in part by a grant from the Wisconsin Humanities Council with funds from the National Endowment for the Humanities in the state of Wisconsin. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in the project do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Arts. The Council creates and supports programs which use history, culture, and discussion to strengthen community life for everyone in Wisconsin. You can log on to their website at www.wisconsinhumanities.org, and we are very grateful for their support over the years, and grateful to Sharon Stewart for shouldering the responsibility of getting the grant in. It also creates an opportunity. It also creates an opportunity for us to partner together, and you can read more about each of our individual organizations on the back. We're thrilled to have John Foltz here tonight. He came up from Madison, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say. Even though we know the story in various ways, I think his pulling it together will be really wonderful. So, thank you, John.
Okay, I'd like to thank the Washburn Heritage Association and the Washburn Area Historical Society for putting these programs together. And I'd also like to thank them for including Tony Woyak's name in this particular series. Tony spent a lot of time gathering stories about this community, and then he published the books. And we can enjoy all the stories that Tony published and collected, so I'm glad that they've included Tony's name in this particular series. Most of the photos that you'll see tonight were taken by Chick Sheridan, and they're part of the Washburn Area Historical Society's collection, so I'd like to thank that organization again for everything they have and allowing me to dig around in that basement archive of theirs. It's quite a treasure chest that they have up there, so I'd encourage you to support both these organizations. They're very worthwhile organizations. Okay, let's get going here. This afternoon, Joan Bratley and Janet Bergman gave me a little information written by Terry Welty. Terry's mother painted this picture. Vila Welty, am I pronouncing that name right? Is it Vila or Vila? Villa Welty? And I'm going to read what Terry wrote. He said, "Mom painted 3 of them. The copy you see is of the first she made. When it was finished, I said it was mine, and she let me have it. The second, which is really this copy, he must have sent a photo along with this little note. He said, the second was made for Jim Killer Kyle to be hung in his new restaurant, the Rainbow Grill. It hung there until the grill was closed. Then it went to Earl Johnson, owner of the Washburn Bakery, and it hung there for many years. From there, it went to the new high school. It's now hanging on the second floor of the Cultural Center up in the museum area for the Historical Society. So Terry Welty, probably one of Gary's friends. Terry? Huh? In your marching band? It's been just a couple of days, over 70 years since the Walker High School burned. It burned on February 5, 1947, and that would be 70 years 2 days ago. Today's the 7th. It was known as the Castle on the Hill, and it was completely destroyed. Noon on February 5, 1947, the school caught fire. By the end of the day, just a shell remained. The story I'm going to tell tonight is based primarily on over 50 Chick Sheridan photos, along with excerpts from Lars Larsson's book, Chequamegon Bay and Its Communities, Washburn, the City to Be. Chick was a 1922 graduate of the Walker High School, and Lars Larsson was a senior on February 5, 1947. Is Pat Summerfield here? No? I think Pat was also a senior. Jimmy DeBell was a junior. And Jack Peterson was a 46 graduate, and Arlene, 45 graduate. And I don't know if there are any other attendees here who actually went to school in the Walker High School. A number said they watched it burn. I'm going to start back in the late 1800s and give a little bit of a history here. In the late 1800s, Washburn was a boom town. The population in 1885 was 741. 5 years later, it was over 3,000. By 1895, it was over 5,000. The boom was no doubt due to the exploitation of the area's natural resources, timber and brownstone. Washburn also had a pretty healthy shipping activity due to the natural harbor out here. With the increasing population, classroom space was a problem. Pioneer School housed the high school. The Pioneer School sat on the corner of 1st Avenue East and 6th Street. I have a map for those of you who may have grown up on the West End and don't know where 6th Avenue East is. I'll show on the map. So there was a need for a new school. In 1893, the city secured a loan of $25,000 from the state, and land was purchased on the corner of Washington Avenue and West 9th Street. Ooh, better go back one here. Okay. I had a little laser pointer here. There we go. can't find it. You'll see the location of the Walker High School is up here. Here's Washington Avenue, running up here. Here's where the new Walker High School was built. To let you know, this is about where the St. Louis Catholic Church sits today. You can see there's really not much north of here. One other thing I want to point out here is the city's water reservoir sitting up here. Now, I think this is wrong because this shows the reservoir on the other side of Washington Avenue. It actually is now over here. I doubt if it was ever moved. Jimmy, you know if it was ever moved?
No, same place.
Yeah, so this map is wrong. I want to point out a couple other things about this map. It's called the Sanborn Fire Insurance Map, and its date is 1898. Purpose of the map was to gather information so that insurance companies could evaluate risks and set rates. All right? The information printed up on the right-hand side talks about the water distribution system, the number of fire hydrants, the condition of the streets, the size of the fire department. So a little bit of information on there about the fire protection of the area. There's one thing missing. One big thing missing. Doesn't give any elevations. Okay? Looks like it's pretty flat land. And this will play into what actually happened with the Walker School. Now, in case you can't place it exactly where the high school was, here's a Google Earth photo. Again, Washington Avenue. Here's the Washburn Fire Department, rather appropriate. Here's where the Walker High School was. And you'll notice the brick building behind the fire department. That's actually the boiler house for the Walker High School, still standing. Here's a blow-up of the previous photo. Again, here's the fire department. Here's the boiler house. From the Sanborn fire maps, I was able to extract a little drawing here of the Walker High School to give you some idea of the size of the Walker High School. You can compare it to the buildings that are currently there. And I was able to superimpose it to match up the size of the boiler room with what's actually there. Pretty good sized building. And here's another photo. So, gives you some idea of the size of the building. And there it is. The school was designed by a Cleveland architect, built of brownstone taken from the Houghton quarries. It was named the Walker High School after Peter Walker. Peter Walker was the superintendent of the Bigelow Mill in Washburn, but he wasn't here any longer when the school was built. And I wondered, why was it named after Peter Walker? And I couldn't find any reason given, but I did notice that in 1894, when the school was built, one Lyman T. Walker, Peter's son, was the president of the school board.
Okay.
Lars Larson provides a description of the building that he uncovered, and I'm going to read it. He says, "The school is a finely executed example of the Romanesque revival period. The squat, massive appearance that characterizes the Richardsonian Romanesque is replaced here by an intricately textured, soaring composition. The broad arched openings, the low hipped roof, and incorporation of towers and turrets all reflect the influence of European medievalism, but in a higher and more exuberant expression than typical of a Victorian design as a whole. The imagery of the Romanesque conveyed a sense of institutional stability and permanence to a fledgling community." Wow. Huh. Well, I much prefer a description given by Bill Holman, and this was recorded in one of Tony's books. I like this one better. "The Walker School, for those who attended, knew even then that it was quite unique. There was a separate entrance for both the boys and the girls. We appreciated the special configuration of the bell tower, the cone-shaped cupolas, the offset parts, the sculptured parts of the half-moon windows. There were large open spaces on each floor, and these were crisscrossed at different angles to get to the classrooms." Bill Holman. Well, the new school was dedicated on Monday, May 25, 1894. On Friday, June 1, 1894, the first graduation ceremony was held. There was one graduating senior. She never went to school here. She went to the Pioneer, but they opened the school at the tail end of the year, so the graduating ceremony was at the Walker School. Her name was Mary Wegerle, who spoke, urging her classmates to work hard and make themselves worthy of the new school facilities as they entered a new age. She called it the Brownstone Age. Well, the Walker School solved the school facilities problems for quite a while. It wasn't until the next boom period, brought on by the expansion of the DuPont Barksdale Works, that the school population caused some more problems. Lars Larson estimates that the population of Washburn exceeded 7,000 in the fall of 1918. That's when the DuPont plant production peaked due to World War I. This was nearly double the population of 3,800 reported in the 1910 census. The school system was bulging at the seams. State public education officials called the Walker School unfit for use as a high school. And this is from Lars Larson. The building, constructed in 1894 for 100 students, had been repeatedly remodeled to accommodate additional students, of which there were about 400 in the junior and senior levels in the fall of 1919. The basement, hallways, and third floor were being used as classrooms, even though lighting, ventilation, space, sanitation, fire safety of the state inspector was blunt, did not provide any opportunity for compromise. The rooms now being used for high school purposes are entirely unfit and are a menace to the life and health of the students. And many rooms must be abandoned. Remodeling is out of the question. The state threatened to withhold state aid unless the Walker High School was replaced. Well, the city was facing a dilemma and came up with a proposal. They wanted to create a district school system, and they had plans drawn up to construct a new $150,000 school. They authorized a referendum for funding, and it failed miserably. But with the end of World War I, Washburn's population quickly dropped. The 1920 census listed the population at 3,700, less than the count in 1910. So I imagine the school overcrowding was a little less of an issue. "20 years later, in 1940, the city's educational facilities again were found wanting by the state. Again, Lars Larsson's criticism is as follows. In the fall of 1940, the State Department of Education conducted a comprehensive survey of all aspects of the city's public education system. Washburn was rated against 25 comparable Wisconsin cities on a number of factors, scoring at or near the bottom on most of them. For example, 25th for total cost of operation and total cost of instruction based on average daily attendance. The 3 school buildings were numerically rated on a number of criteria. The Garfield and Walker schools scoring just barely fair or passable, while the Lincoln School rated poor. Went on to say the Lincoln School should be discarded as soon as conditions warrant. The survey didn't leave much room for the city, and in mid-February 1941, the council took the first steps toward constructing an elementary school to replace the Lincoln School. And of course, that was the DuPont School that replaced the grade schools. But that still left the high school that didn't quite come up to standards. In October of 1940, in response to the critical findings of the State Department of Public Education, the council decided to borrow money to make necessary repairs, reconditioning the Walker High School as a WPA project. The project was approved with the city as sponsor, providing $10,000 of the $30,000 total cost. I have some photos here of the interior of the Walker School after those remodeling projects were finished. And do they look familiar? Huh? Jimmy? Yeah. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. So there are some interior photos from early 1940. So that brings us up to February 5, 1947, when the fate of the castle on the hill was finally decided. Ran into the Gago girls today at lunch. and they reminded me that Chick Sheridan never went outside his house without some cameras. Okay, so I'm going to pretend I'm a Chick Sheridan here. I don't much look like him, I know that, but I'm going to let Chick Sheridan tell the story here. The photos that I found in the Historical Society were in envelopes, and they're really negatives, packed away in envelopes, and on the front of the envelope, Sheridan had described the pictures he was taking, and it's a pretty good show. So I'm going to let Sheridan tell his own story here. Here's a view from the southwest of Walker High School building shortly after fire started at noon Tuesday. Well, he's off a day. It was actually a Wednesday. Blaze started either en roof from sparks lighting on old wood shingles which were exposed when recent high winds tore off some composition roofing, or in attic from defective wiring. It started near southwest shoulder of roof. South side of the building when fire was getting underway. Conical roof of round tower in center of south side was blazing fiercely. The building was known affectionately as the Old Castle on the Hill to many generations of Washburnites. Look at that building burning, people standing right there, a car parked right there. Dick Olson, would you allow that today? Huh?
I figured help. I'd have to keep Sandy and Gary out of there.
Here you can see the blaze that was going on. I don't know if this was actually a double exposure or if it's actually blasting material away from the roof here. I find it hard to believe that it was blasting things away from the roof and people were standing right there, but I don't know. Here's that same car. View of the south side of Walker High School building shortly after the fire started at noon on Wednesday. Blaze started on roof or inside on west side. Wind was blowing from the west. View of the west side shortly after the blaze started. On or under roof near large square ventilating chimney in center. Note, weak stream from the fire hose. Look at that. School located only a short distance down the hill from the city reservoir. No water pressure. When firemen first arrived, they took hose to the upper floors, could not get a stream at all, as they were above reservoir level. Ashland fire truck was able to get a somewhat stronger stream with the aid of a pump. But look at that. Why didn't they just walk away? Here's the firemen on fire escape hosing water into the second floor assembly room. Well, they couldn't get any water up there when the blaze was at its height. View from the northwest corner as flames spread through the attic and down to the second floor. View of the west side at height of fire. Blaze started on or under roof near large square ventilating chimney that can be seen in the top center. Note, weak stream. Well, I think there was more than one negative in this envelope. School located only short distance downhill, etc., etc. No pressure. Kind of a repeat of what was on one of the earlier photos. Note blowtorch blast coming out of the triple window on first floor. I think that shows up on a subsequent photo here. There you can see the inside of the building. Fire was at its peak on the second floor. Upper windows were in the high school assembly room. Blazing ceiling joists may be seen through the windows. Commercial room and office were below assembly room. Typewriters were saved, some office furniture, and records were saved.
And all the children were out.
Yeah.
You know, all the kids had gone downtown or someplace.
Yeah. Washburn and Ashland firemen poured water onto the first floor office of superintendent on the north side of the building to keep safe with school records from getting overheated. Floor held up, safe is believed to be okay. That'll show up later. Some of the firemen. Again, not much of a stream of water. Huge clouds of steam blew away from the building as the Ashland fire hose was turned on. Hot stone on south face after fire had spent its full force. Here you get some idea of the intensity and flames blowing out like a blowtorch here. The entire interior was of pine, seasoned for over a half century. Hardwood floors were soaked with oil. Every window belched flames when fire was at its worst. The whole structure was gutted an hour and a half after it started. Building was almost obscured by clouds of smoke and steam when fire was at its peak. This shows the south and east sides of the building.
Chick Sheridan photographs, right?
Pardon?
Chick Sheridan photographs, right?
Yes. All these are shared in photos, yeah. View of the south side structure when the whole thing was ablaze. Insurance was $48,000 on building and $4,000 on the contents. Total loss. Building was known affectionately as Old Castle on the Hill to many generations of Washburnites. Looking up at west face of building near southwest corner as fire roared through the 54-year-old structure like a tornado. Washburn firemen on fire escape pour water into wreckage of commercial room on the northwest corner of the building. Huge clouds of steam blew away from the building as the Ashland Fire Department turned on hot south face after fire had spent its force.
They couldn't have noticed.
Some idea of the intensity of that fire. Flames blowing out everywhere. I believe that's the photo that Terry Welty's mother probably used to paint her photo. Her picture. View of the south entrance of school after fire had worked from attic down to first floor. The entrance looked like a gate of hell. Don't ask me how I know. William J. Doucette, Washburn Fire Chief on the left, confers with Bill Griffiths of Ashland Fire Department on the right, who came over with pump truck and 4 men. They gave excellent aid, but it was a lost cause from the start. No pressure, and the building was like a stone furnace filled with kindling. I think Bill Doucette was the fire chief and the street commissioner for a long time here, wasn't he? Yeah. Into the 50s, at least. I don't know if it was in the late 50s at all. Okay. Ervil and Jim, you find yourself in that photo there? Huh? Yeah? Hundreds of students and townspeople stood at a safe distance and watched fire with mixed feelings. Youngsters pretended to be gay, but many plainly felt badly, in violation of the humorous tradition. Many old-timers who looked on the school as the scene of their happiest days watched it with moist eyes as it went up in smoke and spoke with genuine regret. Looking at the bright side, some of them said, well, we'll get the new and modern school we've needed, at least. Anton Holman, custodian of the Walker Building, points to ruins of the structure after fire had spent its full force. East Belfry Tower in the center of picture on east face of building, west half of tower collapsed as interior of building blazed like a furnace. Gable near corner was leaning out when this picture was taken. With Holman, our superintendent of schools, Walter Bruce, and Robert Spears, president of the Board of Education. Robert Spears, president of the Board of Education, confers with superintendent of schools Walter R. Bruce in the schoolyard as fire totally destroys Walker Building. Insurance was $48,000 on the building, $4,000 on contents. Emergency school quarters were to be considered at a special meeting of the board Wednesday night. M.C. Nockey, manager of the DuPont plant at Barksdale, has tentatively agreed to use of DuPont Club Building, the community center. That's the superintendent of schools, Walter Bruce, and the bell that was recovered. Gary Holman told me he rang that bell in 1945, the end of World War I, or World War II, Gary? 1945? Yeah.
The grandfather invited Chuck Sheridan and his daughter Sylvia to come up to the school to ring the bell, and they put Sylvia on a chair. And when she pulled the bell rope, and when it finally went up, it took her right up off the chair.
Anybody know what happened to the bell?
Where is it?
Here's the safe that was recovered. Again, superintendent of schools, Walter Bruce, Elvira Lowe. I suppose she was an assistant or worked in the office. Elvira Lowe, did she?
Yeah.
Secretary.
Secretary? Yeah.
She had been a teacher.
Was she? At one time? Yeah. Get some idea of what it was like when the flames were gone. Nothing left.
What happened to all the old stone?
We'll get there. Hang on.
You have to wonder.
Give you some idea of what was left. It sits behind the firehouse today. No damage. What's in that building, Dick? You know, is it part of your?
Well, it was part of the fire department, and then the city street department has it now.
Okay.
It was, in the basement of it was sandstone chunks, and we filled it in and poured a floor at ground level, and used it to store extra equipment and a truck now and then. And then the city took it over 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, it was a skating rink, warming house for a number of years.
Really? Skating rink was up on the hill there?
Yeah.
When was that?
Well, you were away. 25 years ago.
Here's some of the stone.
Wow.
Okay. I want to go back a minute here. I got too far ahead with the photos. The February 6, 1947 edition of the Washburn Times, which actually came out the day after this fire. Sheridan was the editor of the Washburn Times at this time. Paul Robinson was the publisher, but Sheridan was actually the editor. And I'm sure it was his write-up that appeared in the paper, because some of the things I'm going to read and some of the things I read in that write-up, pretty much what he said on the envelopes with his photographs. But there's a few things I want to bring up here. Esther Vino, a Walker High School senior, turned in the alarm shortly after noon on February 5. 5 teachers and between 70 and 80 students were in the building at the time. 2 teachers and some of the boys in the school went to the attic with fire extinguishers, but the fire was well underway and the smoke was too thick for them to get near. Some of the items that were safely removed were scholastic and financial records, a radio/phonograph, an adding machine, 17 typewriters, a piano and band instruments. You'll see the band instruments in a picture a little later. Lars Larson wrote that he was one of those helping to remove items until the fire chief ordered all people to clear out of the building. The Times description included the following. The building became a huge stone furnace filled with kindling. A climax of sorts came as the windows blew out with a boom that could be heard in Bayfield and Ashland. The high wind and open stairwells provided a tremendous draft which increased as the heat and gas within exploded through the windows. The flames roared up through the top and out of the windows like giant blowtorches. Huge clouds of black smoke were carried by the wind over the east half of the city and dropped large pieces of charcoal blocks away. The blaze passed its peak within an hour after it started. Within 2 hours, the building was nothing but a hollow shell of stone, its bottom filled with the blazing, smoldering remnants of the destroyed interior. Flames could be seen Wednesday night, flickering weirdly through the burned out doors and windows of the ghostly looking ruins. The fire continued through the afternoon and night and was still burning on Thursday. Here's a good one. Superintendent Bruce squelched a couple of rumors. First, the story that smoke was smelled Wednesday morning was untrue. Anton Holman made his regular early morning tour and there was no trace of smoke. Second, the rumor that firemen were slow to respond was also addressed. Bruce stated the firemen got there very promptly. There was just nothing they could do. School and city officials met Wednesday evening to deal with the situation. On Thursday, they met with DuPont plant manager to make arrangements for the use of the DuPont Club as a temporary high school. Textbooks were ordered, and Jimmy, when did class start again?
I wasn't exactly, but they weren't new books, we got old books and off again.
Oh, yeah. When did school start again?
What's it, about 3-4 days?
Yeah, I think it was started on the next Monday. Yeah, they were in the DuPont Club. Larson leaves us with some unanswered questions in one of his endnotes, and he writes, "It was surmised that the fire began when sparks from the chimney for the hot lunch stove in the basement ignited old wooden shingles, exposed when wind tore away a large section of the fireproof roofing a few days earlier. There was no official investigation and no one was held responsible for the fire. While there is certainly no intention here of assigning blame, a few pertinent questions suggest themselves. Why, over a period of over 50 years, had not anyone raised the possibility that there might not be enough water pressure at the school located a short distance downhill from the reservoir? Why had not the state's expert school inspectors, who examined the building numerous times over the years and on more than one occasion declared it to be a fire hazard, why had they not recognized the potential problem of insufficient water pressure? And why had not the fire insurance underwriters, who would be expected to be particularly cognizant of facilities for fighting fires, recognized the possibility of insufficient water pressure at the location of the building?" Oops. So, on Monday, following the Wednesday fire, school resumed at the DuPont Club. And there are some photos that, again, Sheridan took of some of the classes in the DuPont Club. The band instruments down here. Oops. See the band instruments? Now, for those of you who remember the DuPont Club, look on the wall back here. See the pool cues? I'm assuming the pool tables were moved aside.
Yeah.
The DuPont manager essentially turned the club over to the school district and suspended all activities that had been going on in the DuPont Club, except for bowling. They still wanted to have bowling on evenings So they kept that open for the community, but all other events were suspended. Larson goes on to provide a closing chapter to his Walker High School fire story. He writes that the city council finally ordered a booster pump for the fire truck in November of 1947. This after the St. Louis Catholic priest expressed concern about the safety of his old wooden frame parish school just down the street from the old Walker High School.
Yeah.
The fire department, the pump was finally installed in May 1948. The fire department tested its pressure where?
On the shelf.
They've tested its pressure on the brownstone skeleton of the old high school. Water was hosed over the top of the standing belfry. The Washburn Times recognized the irony by reporting, the demonstration provided a classic example of locking the stable door after the horse is gone.
Wow.
I've got a couple more photos to share with you. Remember the boiler room that I used to register the location of the Walker High School? Well, that's still standing. And there it is. It's up behind the fire department. Looks to be in pretty good shape. Was there a boiler left in there, Dick? Or was that
No,
long
the
gone?
basement was filled with rubble sandstone.
Oh.
Very irregularly, I mean, so we filled it with sand and then poured a slab, but that steel roof is still there,
Yeah,
and it's still shedding water.
yeah, yeah. They didn't have that on the high school.
Well, I wonder if they didn't, and that's what blew off.
Oh, could
It
be.
might have been covering those old shingles.
Oh, yeah, could be, yeah.
Asphalt shingles.
One more photo. What happened to all the brownstone? Somebody asked, what happened to all the brownstone?
Mm-hmm.
Here's some of it.
Oh, wow, cool.
Recognize that?
Ah.
Richard and Carol Aval's addition to their Chequamegon bookstore. There's some of it.
Cool.
Richard said it was located in a ravine somewhere up, I guess, just a little bit west of the Walker High School.
Wow.
So that's where some of it ended up.
John,
Yeah.
there's lots of it buried right along 8th Street and up Washington Avenue, kind of bordering the football field,
Oh,
covered over with dirt.
yeah. He said it was buried along West 8th Street. That's just north of the Catholic Church and separates the Catholic Church from the
By the
football field.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah.
The basement is also full, because when we dug a water line for the fire hall, we tried to go through where the site of the Washburn School, or where the school was,
Yeah.
and you couldn't dig, it was all sandstone. And then somebody had an idea, let's salvage it. Well, it was buried in earth and mud and wood and junk, and we were gonna pour a slab, we just poured over it.
Yeah, yeah. So it's there for a future generation.
Yeah.
Huh? Archaeological dig. Okay, so since you've seen some of the remnants here, I'm going to wrap this up. The past isn't dead. It's not even passed. So go over to Richard and Carol's, look at that brownstone, go in, buy a book or two, go up and look at the old boiler house sitting behind the fire department. Okay? Remnants of the old Walker School. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
Yeah, I had a comment. This was such a, what did you say?
Yeah.
This was such a beautiful, beautiful building, you know, and so imposing. It makes you think that the public thought that some very, very important things were happening there. And, you know, this was very much like schools all over the northern Midwest. Look at the Beezer School, which was also a very, very imposing building. Now compare that to modern day schools that look like factories by comparison. And what does that tell us about the public's attitude now toward secondary education? I don't know the answer to that question.
I like that.
I just wondered where the fire department was at that time.
Where the current city hall is.
Burning.
Was in there.
I don't think he knows
The
that.
city hall was there too?
Yeah, I think so, right? The fire truck was stored
In that garage?
in the garage there at the city hall.
There was one fire hall down where the little building is too, and another one with the little houses by Leno's. And that tore them down.
Yeah, not in 1947. No, that was, really? Really? Okay. Okay, thank you.
The bar is still open, and it's nice to show our appreciation to our hosts by, maybe refreshing our beverages or not, but we definitely want to show our appreciation to this wonderful speaker. Wasn't that awesome?